on AI. She's an AI researcher and a philosopher who's worked on issues in philosophy, ethics, and the governance of AI and computational sciences. As I said, she's an assistant professor here. She's a core member of the Institute for Complex Social Dynamics, part-time research scientist at Google DeepMind, lots of questions about that, and a research affiliate at the Center for the Governance of AI. She's also a council member of the World Economic Forum's Global Future Council on Artificial General Intelligence, and a 2024 Schmidt Sciences AI 2050 Early Career Fellow. And actually, there are many, many more accolades. She's doing really amazing work. It's really, I was so glad that we hired you. I'm so glad that you're part of the Pittsburgh community. Welcome here. Please take the floor.
Yeah, thank you so much for the generous introduction, and hello everyone. The question that I want to kind of like discuss today is the question of how should we think about AI risks. And I want to first give probably a little bit of a context, especially for people in the audience who are here to basically hear from me some contribution to classical questions in philosophy. I'm going to discuss this question as a practitioner in the field, as a person who's been working with AI researchers in various different institutions since 2018. And so the types of philosophical contributions that I personally find valuable are the ones that engage very directly with practitioners and basically says something useful to the practitioners. For some philosophers, this might not be considered as a talk with lots of philosophical meat. I'm fine with that. But I just wanted to kind of like set the expectations right. Okay, so the question of how should we think about, doesn't work. Okay, perfect. How should we think about AI risks from AI? Kind of like I'm going to think about that in terms of how should we conceptualize the risks of AI. And the reason I think this is a very important philosophical question is because the kind of answers we give to this question shapes the kinds of AI systems we deploy and the ways we govern them, the kinds of governance mechanisms that we develop, either in terms of regulations or in terms of technical tools. In other words, a lot of the powerful AI institutions that deploy AI systems in the world and give us benefits or harms, they have a particular mental model of risks from AI. So as a result, I think it's very important to kind of get that model right. And then ultimately, again, I think the way we are going to answer to this question guides the sort of a future we build and defines how the world that we are living in will evolve. Okay, so just having said that to emphasize why this is a very important philosophical question. So I explore how AI practitioners conceptualize risk in the talk today, and also how those concepts dictate the actions that AI developers take in relation to deploying and governing AI systems. So in particular, I'm going to kind of like discuss 3 points. One is I'm going to, again, from my personal experience and perspective, share with you AI practitioners' conceptions of risk, and I'm going to claim that those conceptions, broadly speaking, split between 2 notions of risks: existential and non-existential risk, or extinction and non-extinction risks. Then I'm going to basically present some results, which are joint work with my wonderful postdoc, Gyevnar, who is here in the room. We should all talk to him, where we basically look computationally at the literature, various different clusters of literature where people conceptualize AI risks. And we kind of claim that actually the distinction between the surface level distinctions between extinction risk versus non-extinction risk kind of falls apart if we adopt a particular stance. And then finally, I'm going to defend what I call a polycrisis model of AI existential risk, which is kind of non-standard, but I think it's a model that we should adopt. And basically, this model, in one sentence, suggests that what we might call, or what some AI practitioners call non-existential risk from AI, actually generate existential risk. So the dichotomy that we assumed at the beginning might not be valid under certain conditions. Okay, so first, we all use the notion of risks from AI, but just as preliminaries, I want to suggest that there are maybe 4 different meanings that we can associate with the notion of risk from AI. And everything I'm going to say is valid no matter what conception you adopt. Okay, I might basically adopt one of these conceptions when I talk, but I would be able to reformulate my arguments in relation to other notions as well. So in the literature, and these conceptions come actually from a close look at the literature on risk from AI, and you can just, if you want to read more, you can just refer to this paper. By risk from AI, we could mean an unwanted event. So some people by risk from AI mean an unwanted event that is caused or produced by an AI system. For example, an AI system exhibiting particular type of behavior, like power-seeking behavior, posing a risk of humanity's extinction. By risk from AI, we could mean the cause or causes of an unwanted event that might occur. So it's not just the unwanted event, but the causes of the unwanted event that might occur. By risk, we could mean the probability of an unwanted event that may occur. And this is also very interesting because in some traditional literature, the notion of risk has been basically operationalized in terms of probabilistic notions. But if you look at the broader literature, you see even today, a lot of people, a lot of AI researchers talk about risk without necessarily adopting a probabilistic notion. So it's kind of good to be aware that the notion of risk in the literature on AI risk sometimes is understood as a probabilistic notion or statistical notion. Sometimes it's more of a qualitative notion. And then it could also mean, according to some interpretations, a kind of a statistical expectation value of an unwanted event. By that, we mean the product of probability and kind of a consequences, maybe in terms of some monetary numbers, harms, or etc. Okay, so just being a little bit clear about what could we mean by the notion of risk. You don't need to adopt necessarily a probabilistic notion of risk to follow me. Okay, now the first kind of claim proposition that I want to argue for is that AI practitioners' conceptions of risks are split between existential and non-existential risks. And here I'm going to adopt a kind of a perspectival stance. I am going to share with you how I, as a representative of a group of people, see this split. You might say, actually, the split is not valid. I just think the split is valid. It's been very much harmful to the development of beneficial or non-beneficial AI systems. That's why I want to get clarity on that. Okay, so I'm also going to adopt, let's say, I'm going to look at the previous decade, like since 2015, 2016, and the way this split between these two conceptions sort of came about. But again, this is really like a partial, incomplete history. Right? Okay, so let's say from 2010, there's been a lot of journalists that start to bring attention to harms from AI systems. And by harms from AI systems, we mean unintended harms from AI systems, harms that occur after an AI system is developed, the designers don't want that harm to occur, but basically that harm kind of occurs. And so in reaction to a lot of discussions within the AI community, broader public, with policymakers, etc., those people who were pushing forward for the development of AI systems started bringing attention to ethics of artificial intelligence. And by ethics, these people did not necessarily mean, okay, let's hire someone who is an academic normative ethicist trained in Anglo-American world, and that person is going to tell us how to build a moral artificial intelligence system. But we are going to adopt this notion much broader. An ethicist of artificial intelligence system, therefore, became a person who is coming from a critical background, could be philosophy, could be political science, could be anthropology, could be sociology. This person cares very much about societal impacts of AI. Sometimes this person has a technical background, sometimes it doesn't. But basically, the realization was that we need to bring in different disciplines together in order to tackle this new kind of emerging problem in the real world. And so many different companies, and of course, I'm here as I'm hired here as a person who specializes in ethics of AI. I mean, academia, other institutions, try to kind of like bring in different people and realize what even this field is, right? The field was not like very well defined. In the artificial intelligence communities at the time, two very important, in my view, conferences were established around between 2016 and 2018. They're all from the Association for Computing Machinery, conferences that were established originally basically within the AI community with the realization that without meaningful interdisciplinary work, we will not be able to address ethics of artificial intelligence, whatever that means. And these two conferences are known as FACT, a conference on fairness, accountability, transparency, and the other one, AIES, a conference on AI, ethics, and society. And basically, these conferences started publishing various different proceedings and different papers. And when you read these papers, you just see that like there are many different people from different walks of life saying something here. Most of the work, not all of the work, engages with the AI systems we have here and now. There are some theoretical works, some works about artificial superintelligence coming kills us all, but those discussions were not at all central to the conversations here. So I would say then, in summary, over the past 10 years, an emerging group of researchers, I would say a very large group, I don't know how many people, were kind of like came about, and maybe I can say like, I think thousands of people, maybe tens of thousands of people, I don't know the exact number, but basically they try to think about in a very pragmatic way, about questions around fairness, accountability, transparency, and artificial intelligence systems. In the field of societal impacts of AI, most of the people like to center their concerns around risks from artificial intelligence. So one way to reformulate what these people do is that they would say, okay, we try to minimize the risk of harm from artificial intelligence systems. For example, we don't want these systems to be not accountable. So non-accountability is a risk of harm. We want to kind of mitigate that. And so as a result, there is a very clear analogy between the efforts, the concerns of these groups of people and the notion of risk. Okay. Then what happens is that various different people came about and tried to say, okay, maybe we need to bring some cohesion to how we are coming about in mitigating negative impacts of AI in society. So maybe what we can do is that we can provide a taxonomy of risk of harms from AI systems. And then we can say, okay, all of us are trying to contribute mitigate to first understanding and mitigating the risk of harm from AI systems. And this taxonomy again came about from interdisciplinary collaborations between different people. For example, some AI scientists know how to operationalize a particular statistical conception of bias in relation to some social justice agenda, and then some political philosophers who very much were interested in different theories of social justice came about and questioned those metrics, and so the conversation like grow in this way. But basically, these groups of ethicists of AI try to develop a notion of a non-existential risk from artificial intelligence. And as you see, and I'm going to like go over these concerns, all of these considerations have been operationalized. It's just that we might get them at bigger scales. So this is coming from a paper that I was a co-author, was written by 20 different people. And basically what we try to do here is that we try to give a comprehensive landscape of the risk of harm from language models being an example of generative AI systems. And this paper came about when I was doing an internship at Google DeepMind. It came out before the rise of ChatGPT, but of course, people in these companies know that the next wave of AI that they're going to push out is going to be generative AI. So let's at least bring attention to the risk of these systems. Of course, very important to say, these considerations were discussed, were brought to the attention of the public by a lot of other people before Google DeepMind releasing this paper. But I think this is one a comprehensive look at where we are with our understanding of risk and whether we can mitigate this or not. Okay, so very briefly, I want to go over these categories of risk. The first category is like the harms from language models or your favorite generative AI system that produces some sort of a wrongful, discriminatory, or exclusionary like speech. And there were references to hundreds of examples or thousands of examples where this basically systems would exclude a specific group of people or would produce some harmful stereotypes only in relation to a particular group of people, not in a uniform way. Then there were risk of information hazards, which were the harms from these language models leaking or inferring true sensitive information. And I think this has been also like very much discussed. There were the harms from language models producing false or misleading information. And actually, in relation to this risk, there is a very huge open questions around how should we think about the notion of truth in the age of large language models. I don't think we actually have a good answer to that question. There were lots of problems with malicious uses of AI, harms from actors using the language models to intentionally cause harm, or human-computer interaction harms, basically when, for example, a user trusts the language models or uses language models in order to maybe harm themselves. Like we have many examples of systems, like teenagers, for example, using, or even non-teenagers, getting addicted to some particular types of chatbots and then committing suicide. Of course, the question of what causes the suicide, but definitely the use of this chatbot has been a contributing cause. And then there were lots of questions around the automation, job loss, access in the age of huge global injustices, and also the environmental harms that these systems cause, in particular because all of these systems are learning systems, and for learning, huge amounts of data needs to be processed, and there is a big business market around building data centers in places that are water hungry, etc., and carbon emission, etc. But I just want to say all of these risks that I classified here are risks from systems that we have observed. It's very easy to imagine that they can occur. And so a big group of people, a big group of AI practitioners said, okay, we're going to focus on these risks. Like this is what the risk of AI is about. Okay. Obviously, as you know, there has been a very small group of researchers for example, Nick Bostrom being maybe the most famous academic philosopher among them, who have been writing about superintelligence, risk of extinction from superintelligence systems for a while. I would say a very small group until 2023. They've been having lots of conversations on different like media, like blog posts, lots of informal conversations, some publications. I would say majority of conversation was not going through the peer review discussion. And so a part of a kind of an epistemic community was formed that would think and talk about extinction or existential risk from AI. But if you're not a member of that community, it's very hard to even start a conversation. Okay, and I say this because I personally really try to understand them, even having conversations with philosophers, good philosophers in that community, but it seemed like there's a huge package of assumptions that I needed to commit myself to in order to buy into their narratives, and I felt uncomfortable accepting some of them. But anyways, I just gave you an image of what we mean by non-existential risk from AI. These groups of people, very many of them associated with a particular expression called AI safety, were concerned about big risks, right? Like risk of environmental harm from an AI system in the United States. It's not going to kill all of people, but think about extinction of humanity. Like that is the risk of harm from AI. Some of these people went so radical, actually, they would not call the other risks that I presented as risk of AI. By risk of AI, they mean extinction risk from AI. Okay, so they came to the attention of the public in 2023 when a kind of a statement, let's say one sentence statement was put out. It reads as mitigating the risk of extinction from AI should be a global priority alongside other societal scale risks such as pandemics and nuclear war. It's not mitigating risk from AI, it's mitigating the risk of extinction from AI. Okay. So many people signed this, including myself. I signed this because I thought this is a metaphor. It's a metaphorical sentence that is supposed to bring attention to public. But after getting more engaged and involved with this, with lots of these people, I just figured that no, they had a literal interpretation of this sentence. I had a metaphorical interpretation, and these two don't match necessarily. So the risk of extinction from AI then I think really came to attention, and the concerns of these people, extinction risk from AI has been around the risk from capabilities of AI systems. The previous risk that I mentioned, okay, you have some capabilities, but there are other things. It's just deployment, building infrastructure. It's a much more complex story. Here, story is simple and clean, right? It's just we are building more and more advanced AI systems. They are becoming capable. They start developing capacities for self-reasoning. Maybe they would be able to help some malicious users to produce chemical, bioradiological, or nuclear weapons. They are going to self-proliferate. They are going to maybe escape the lab, and then we are all doomed. So very, very particular story around there. And then a lot of backlash against the use of extinction terminology came from the public, from other groups. So then terminologies became a little bit more kind of like less extinction themes. So they became like dangerous capabilities or extreme risks or catastrophic risks. But a lot of the people from the AI safety community, when you say dangerous capabilities, they think about the extreme cases of extinction risk. Okay, so then these types of risks, there is this new community, not new, but like a smaller community of researchers that were becoming larger and larger. Their whole focus was mitigating risks of harm from capabilities of AI systems, because extinction could happen, or existential risk from these systems is not a speculation anymore. It's real, even if it's like the chances are 1%. We should take it seriously. And somehow their brain was able to produce some sort of probabilistic numbers associated with extinction rate. I really did my best, even as a person with a PhD in math. I couldn't do it, but I have to try. But basically, this particular epistemic community was very comfortable with deploying probabilities in a particular way, talking about future in this way. Okay, just to go a bit more concrete, because part of my talk is going to give an alternative picture to this. One of the loudest people in this AI safety community, I guess you've all heard of his name, is Eliezer Yudkowsky. Very, very interesting person. I guess you can bring someone to talk about his contributions, various types of contributions for 2-3 hours. But a few months ago, he and his co-author, Nate Suarez, put a book out that says it all. And I think the title of this book is maybe the smartest title I've ever seen. And basically, it says it all. If anyone builds it, everyone dies. And it is artificial superintelligence. And so in this book, basically, it's a kind of a short book, very neat, very clean, very simply written, but they offer a kind of a story that they've been discussing since the past maybe 20 years, but they kind of like publish it finally. And so basically they say, look, and so this is not just a philosophy book. That's why I want to like bring attention to the significance of AI practitioners. This book is endorsed by tens of people, including like ex-members of national security of the United States and ex-CIA directors and professors and etc. And in this book, towards the end of the book, the authors suggest a particular policy path that we all need to take, which is we have to stop building more advanced AI systems, otherwise we go extinct. And maybe even if we end up having like a nuclear war between countries and I don't know, millions of people die, maybe, you know, it could be justified because this extinction is just so bad, right? So the mental image that is conveyed is that the most important event we should really focus on is the risk of extinction from AI. Very clearly, they also state that this is just one potential scenario that we are sketching in the book. But again, the conditional is quite deterministic. Okay, so basically the argument goes like this. It says that, look, we are building more and more capable AI systems. So we are already having AI systems that outperform humans in various different games. Like that's a fact. So we have, for example, AlphaGo, like so many different other AI systems playing much more complex games like Ultimatum, etc., that perform better than humans. So we are already having narrow superhuman AI systems for well-defined games. And so we see that, let's say, some systems like AlphaFold, which is not a super intelligent system, is performing some predictive tasks for the structure of particular tasks better than humans, right? So what? How should we extrapolate from this? Then these people say, well, let's look at GPT-1. Let's compare GPT-1 to GPT-2 to GPT-3 to GPT-4 to GPT-5. The capabilities of this system are getting better and better. The systems are general systems. And so we are kind of on a trajectory to build superhuman AI systems. This is not a speculation. It is plausible to build it, right? I think fair point. But then they say there are two particular assumptions that we need to commit to. One of them is called the orthogonality assumption. The other one, instrumental convergence, has been in the philosophical literature for quite some time. I think it was introduced by Eliezer Yudkowsky in some non-formal venues, but Nick Bostrom basically brought a lot of systematization to Eliezer's works. So just to give Eliezer some credit, I just want to say there are lots of people who think what Nick Bostrom has done has been really systematizing in a rigorous, analytic way what Eliezer Yudkowsky has done, who is not an academic, who is not interested in publishing academic papers and has a very different kind of a character than a lot of the academics. So these two assumptions basically say, look, the orthogonality assumption says, look, you might have a system which is very intelligent, and this system might have some final goals, but the normative quality of the final goals is orthogonal to the intelligence of the system. In other words, we can't assume that because a system is intelligent, then it's necessarily good, or it's going to set good goals. Now, the worst kind of goals that this system could bring about is the goal of extinction of humanity. As a result, we can't assume that a system that is very smart will not give rise to extinction of humanity. The second assumption or hypothesis is instrumental convergence. And so basically this assumption says, look, for a wide range of final goals, we adopt some instrumental goals in order to achieve those final goals. So you can consider whatever goal in your life, that for that goal you need to preserve some resources, you need to compete with other players, and so then you need to preserve yourself from death, you know. So there are some, let's say, survival, maybe instrumental goals or other types of goals, power-seeking goals, for example, that we would adopt in order to reach a final goal. So as a result, no matter what the final goal of this system is going to be, it's going to consume lots of resources, it's going to preserve itself from getting shut down, etc. Then they say, look, for a while, people thought we can make this system safe in a guaranteed way. We can align the systems with human values. But actually, look at the literature, look at what we are not going to make it. Like these systems, the rate of progress, capability progress of the systems is faster than the rate of safety development around the systems. So it's not going to happen. And so then what happens then, we are going to build this artificial general intelligence system. By definition, an artificial general intelligence system is a system that can perform general tasks that any human is able to perform, or the best human is able to perform. And one of those cognitive capabilities is designing better systems. So this system is going to design better systems, goes into a loop of recursive self-improvement. And so we are going to build an artificial superintelligence system. And then the process from, or the path from AGI to artificial superintelligence, or ASI, is going to happen via recursive self-improvement. We're going to have intelligence explosion, etc. So, but that is another assumption there. And then, of course, one very important assumption there, that this artificial superintelligence system will have access to humanity-ending livers. And that you can have all kinds of assumptions. It can make us irrelevant. We might lose all our agency until AGI comes or ASI comes. Or it might be that the systems would say, well, I need to use every inch of human molecules or body parts in order to become more and more powerful. And so I'm going to eat them, or like I'm going to just, yeah, kill all of them to eat. I was watching the Stranger Things over the past couple of weeks, and it seems like you can, yeah, basically build some, interpret this book in terms of that series as well. Okay, so that is a story, right? And that is a story. Why I sketch this story, because I want to say the people, at least the perceived conception of people in the AI safety community, lots of AI practitioners, they perceive conceptions of risk centers around this notion of risk. Like, okay. Now, you might say, well, that's fine. Like, we all have like pluralities of perspectives about various different issues. So it's okay. Like some people could say we care about extinction risk. Some people could say we don't care about extinction risk. We can all live together. The problem is that, again, for various sociological and economic reasons and political reasons as well, this distinction between these two terms brought a lot of tensions between communities who cared both about building beneficial AI systems, but at parts they were actually canceling out their impact. Like a huge part of the community of AI researchers started fighting with one another and canceling one another, and then started mocking each other, etc. So one of the very loud voices is Emily Bender. She even suggests that we shouldn't discuss AI safety because AI safety is branded in a particular way. We shouldn't talk about safety risk. Safety risk means extinction risk. So basically, ramification of it is we shouldn't talk about safety of AI, right? Which is super strange because as an engineer, safety of any technological system, especially AI systems, matters so much. So there were some, like, I would say, unintended consequences of these kinds of perspectives in the literature. I don't have time to go through other issues and complexities around this, but there are particular ethical theories that are packaged and endorsed by various different people in the AI safety community: effective altruism, long-termism, or rationalist movements. And so much to say around this, I don't have time, but these perspectives are very much endorsed by a big part of the AI safety community, not AI ethics. I think AI ethics community is much more pluralistic and much more open, except for accepting some AI safety people. Now, some other figures like Geoffrey Hinton, Nobel Prize winner in physics, and also Turing Award winner, one of the big names, people call him godfather of deep learning, etc. He very clearly endorses this distinction between existential extinction risk and non-existential risk. So it says, yeah, like those people care about non-existential risk, I'll care about extinction risk. And you can imagine in society, lots of people love to hear this like bold stories about the future. And so lots of these people who were just endorsing extinction risk populated the space of discussions about societal impacts of AI. The other communities were pissed. And so there was like a lot of like back and forth. And also one other thing is that some computer scientists could not take Eliezer Yudkowsky's views about extinction risk from ASI seriously. Very respectable computer scientists in very good universities, they say like, this is a joke, this is a distraction, we shouldn't talk about extinction risk from AI. Okay. So now the question is, what should we do? How should we think about these kinds of risk? And actually, is it the case that these perceptions of risk from AI safety and AI ethics groups are really orthogonal to one another? So in two papers that we wrote with Balint, we tried to look at this question from a computational perspective. So we said, look, these people, lots of them are researchers. They publish papers. Let's see what they are doing in their papers. They say we are minimizing extinction risk from AI. Are they minimizing extinction risk from AI, or are they minimizing some risks that this other community also thinks we should minimize, right? So we try to go beyond the words that have been used. We try to see from the practice what these people are exactly doing. So we curated various different data sets, and the rest of the second part of my talk is all work with Balint, who did a wonderful job in providing lots of important computational analysis. One of our papers is published, and the other one, we are going to release it next week. Okay, so we wanted to ask whether we should actually give this label of AI safety to people who talk about extinction risk, or we should go and kind of take that space and just create a different way of thinking about risk from AI. So we collected papers. These are mainly peer-reviewed papers and not some non-peer-reviewed papers. And so we try to kind of like analyze actually what people are doing when they publish work on AI safety. So first of all, we observe that people who work on AI safety actually use a lot of like reasonable terms that AI developers use, or people who care about ethics of AI use. Like they are focusing on classifiers. They're talking about the current AI systems. They're talking about Markov decision processes, reinforcement learning, topics, big data, like everything that any AI researcher cares about. Seems like these people also are caring about those terms. They're not publishing things on artificial superintelligence. They're actually working on current AI systems, despite the fact that they are committed to a different meta-narrative. But seems like that meta-narrative is not visible directly in what they're really doing. And then we analyzed what types of risks this AI safety we observe in this collection of AI safety papers. And these are all like reasonable safety risks that we discuss in one way or another in relation to the previous technological systems as well. Of course, now we have a new type of system, so different interpretations of those risks. But in this paper, we claim that actually these resources are continuous with the types of risks of harms that people were focusing on when they did engineering safety practices. And as you see, they're all about like undesirable behavior. For example, we don't want a nuclear bomb also to, like show undesirable behavior. We don't want it to be explored in an unsafe way. I mean, in the whole cyberspace, all of the cybersecurity for the past 20 years has been really around like basically mitigating these types of risks. So the observation that we had from this computational study was that actually when you look at what people are really doing, they are the AI safety researchers who publish work. They are trying to make the current AI system safe. And that observation is kind of maybe very distant from, oh, we are trying to mitigate extinction risk from AI. You don't need to buy into that story in order to make sense of their work. Okay, then in another paper that we are finishing, we try to actually see whether the risk of harms that a group of AI practitioners under the heading of AI ethics focus on is really different from the risk of harm that AI safety researchers focus on. And we found some we found actually a lot of similarities and some huge differences as well. So the lesson that I want to kind of convey here is that this distinction, this dichotomy that is very much perceived, and the public discussion really tries to tell everyone is not valid when you look at the publication, the research outputs of people in these communities. They talk differently maybe about some works they're doing, but they are doing they're focusing on the same types of concerns. So there's a distance, there's a distinction or a huge space between what they think they are doing and what they're doing, basically. And if we just look at what they are doing and that question, we try to understand that, we just figure that actually a lot of the concerns that people are focusing on between the two communities are shared. Now, why we are interested in understanding these shared concerns, because we think that to go forward and to make sure that we can address all of these crazy open challenges of artificial intelligence systems, we need to go past over you are right, I'm right. We need to understand the distinctions, but we also need to leverage huge similarities and commonalities and common grounds between these communities. Okay, and so then the last thing I just want to talk about is that, okay, like if you agree with what I've said, one question is like, how should we think about extinction or existential risk from AI? And I just want to kind of like show you that maybe there are two different models of thinking about extinction risk. One is we develop this very capable superintelligence system that kills all of us, which is a classical understanding. And the other one is that actually things are going to become very complex, and then on a, you know, like system theory analysis or understanding of the system of the world, like because a lot of systems are dependent on one another, the resilience of the global world is going to become very low. And by some events, like things could go very, very catastrophically. I'm not giving an argument in favor of extinction risk of humanity, because I believe humanity is 9 billion. Like if you just think about it, 9 billion spread across the world. Some of these people have no access to even cyberspaces or internet or etc. Just the assumption for me just doesn't work. The argument I'm giving in this paper is that I'm going to say, look, the majority of people, when they think about existential risk or extinction risk from AI, they think there is this decisive event that is going to happen. We have this super intelligent AI that comes, kills us all. Actually, it might not be the case. We might have a different model of existential risk from AI, and we need to kind of like think about that model more clearly. Okay, so I went to this argument. I don't want to go over this argument again, but I want to give a label for this mental image or this narrative, and that I call it a decisive artificial or ASI X risk hypothesis. So I say people who think about, there is a group of people, there's a perception, story about how extinction risk comes about that says ASI could cause an event that leads to humanity's extinction, or an existential event, existential risky event happens. For example, we end up in a very bad situation which we can't reverse, like we will lose all of our civilizational achievements, etc. So I call this view a decisive X risk hypothesis. And so it means that I don't say this is just the X risk hypothesis, it's a particular type of X risk hypothesis. And the one that I want to promote is what I call another hypothesis called accumulative X risk hypothesis. And according to this view, you don't want to just build a very advanced system that is going to kill everyone, or a collection of those very advanced systems that are going to kill the humanity, but you can actually have a look at the interconnected nature of the global world as a big system that we are living in. And you just need to understand, if a lot of the systems that give stability to the world, if they collapse, then we might end up in an existential, like, catastrophic situation. So in this paper, I give a kind of a scenario. I call it a perfect storm Mr. scenario. And so each letter in this Mr. basically stands for a particular risk of harm. It's an ethical risk of harm. It's not existential. And I just say, if you gradually accumulate them, you can have a particular threshold that when that threshold is passed, all of these systems kind of collapse. So for example, you could have huge manipulative AI systems that completely destroy the epistemic spaces we've built. So trust for democracy, trust in science, everything could really like go down. All kinds of insecurity threats that we have with AI systems in cyberspace, you can have them much more. We know already, we don't want to talk about that we have all kinds of systems for global surveillance and trust erosion. We are building more of them. There are worries around economic destabilization, job loss, etc. And also there are huge worries about human rights infringements and like what happens when we ignore the importance of human rights, etc. And so if all of these risks becomes operationalized in a large scale, then you could have a scenario in which basically one small event could happen. You have a very unstable, non-resilient system. and it can get targeted by any event. So here I give like a sci-fi kind of story where you have a like a blackout in two different kinds of continents, and that blackout can give rise to a lot of demonstrations, protests, and with various types of weapons and military devices, etc., that we have. It's possible to imagine what could happen. And so we can end up having a really, really horrible existential risky scenario to humanity without necessarily wanting artificial superintelligence here, or without having that. So extinction or existential risk is a risk that we should take seriously in relation to these other risks that are non-existential. So this dichotomy, the purpose of this paper is just to say should be broken. And then I'm going to stop here. There are lots of like open questions about obviously what thresholds turn a cumulative risk into irreversibility. We can't assume that everything happens and everything is connected, and therefore extinction or existential risk gets operationalized. There are questions about which interventions should we put in place to reduce coupling between the systems. And I want to contrast this way of thinking about governing AI to Yudkowsky's way of thinking about governing AI, which is like, let's stop building. I'm just like, no, we can build, but we need to make sure that the system remains stable. And very hard question. And of course, how to audit for path-specific risks in model and system evaluation, such that this global interconnected system doesn't become very non-stable. Okay, I'm going to stop here, and thank you for your attention.
Let's take a quick break. Yeah, so about 4 minutes.
I have to run to back. I'll see you next week.
Yes, exactly. Was it on Tuesday or Thursday?
Tuesday.
Tuesday. Okay,
I'll
perfect.
send you an update. So
Yeah, and also the location for the class.
yeah, but yeah, basically, looking forward to it.
Okay, perfect. Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks. Yeah, and thanks for writing the email. You wrote me an email, right? Yeah. I'll respond. Yeah. If you want, we can have a chat. Oh, of course. Yeah. Okay, great.
You have time, you should stick around.
Yeah.